Hi, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another episode of Achieving Perfection. This is going to be for the blue, red, green node, Being Inhuman, in the Great Tournament. Per the usual, I'm going to show the decks that I would suggest you use. Then I'm going to go over the node itself. I'm going to get into deck building, how would I go about building for this event, and then I'll explain why I chose the decks that I chose to showcase. So for newer players, I would go ahead and use something like this here. And then for players who have most of the cards, namely you have Cranko, I would go ahead and use something like this. All right, so the node itself. This one is actually kind of odd in that it's either going to be one of the easiest nodes for you or it's going to be one of the hardest nodes for you. And so let's get a look at the node and see why that is. So you need to win the fight. You need to summon 5 or more creatures with any of the following subtypes: giants, goblins, or merfolk. And you need to draw 15 or more cards during the fight. The perma support is pretty useful for the most part. So it's going to be Resourceful 2. Convert 2 gems to your Planeswalker colors for each non-human creature you control. So Resourceful 2 means that on your second and third drawn cards of the turn, that will trigger. Now, this will be either really easy or really hard because there really aren't very many giants and there really aren't very many merfolk that you can use to achieve the fairy tale objective. So the best way to go about it is goblins, at the very least at the time that I'm making this video. The giants, for the most part, have really high power, and so you'll probably find that you kill your opponent before you summon 5 of them. And the merfolk, there just aren't enough of them, and if you have the mythic ones that are kind of okay, you probably have better goblins at your disposal. So, how would I go about building for this particular node? Well, what you're going to want to do is go into your cards, and then you're just going to want to go ahead and start by going goblin, right? So goblin is really your best bet. Narrow down to standard, and then take a look. We've only got 3 pages. It's really not too bad. So your best bet is to use Cranko. If you have Cranko, absolutely use him for this node. Cranko just automatically achieves the summon 5 or more creatures with any of the following subtypes. So absolutely, yes, Cranko. Now, I know that a number of you who have this card will probably be tempted to use it, but I would actually suggest against using Chancellor of the Forge. I know that Chancellor of the Forge is a giant and that he's going to go ahead and summon goblins, but you're already going to have achieved the fairy tale objective just by having Cranko out, and this is just going to kill your opponent faster, and you don't necessarily want that when you want to draw 15 or more cards. That's going to slow you down a bit. There are a few other pretty nice options here for summoning goblin tokens. Legion Warboss, if you don't have Cranko, is a pretty decent alternative because Legion Warboss is going to create a goblin token every one of your turns. So with that, you'll complete that summon 5 or more creatures pretty darn quickly. Now, if you don't have Cranko or Warboss, there's one other decent option, and that's Goblin Ringleader. Goblin Ringleader is going to go ahead and fetch the next 2 goblins from your library. So if you use Goblin Ringleader as the only goblin in your deck, then it'll just keep fetching itself over and over again, and you'll find that you summon these 5 goblins pretty quickly. Now let's say that you have none of these rares or mythics. Then what? Well, this is where I would actually suggest that you go for a goblin token strategy. Now, most of you should have dragon fodder. It comes in a lot of the decks with planeswalkers, so you should have this card. It's going to summon 2 1/1 goblins for 6 mana. Now, this is a strategy that I'd really only implement in bronze and silver tiers because in gold and platinum, you will be overrun too quickly for this. But bronze and silver, you'll be perfectly okay doing this. So Dragon Fodder is one option, and that's going to summon 2 1/1s. And then the other one is Goblin Gathering, and this is going to also summon 2 1/1s with the chance that it will summon more than 2 1/1s. For that matter, if you cast Goblin Gathering twice, that will summon 5 goblins, and as you see here, that's going to complete your goblin objective. So Goblin Gathering is pretty useful here. I particularly like these in Rawl, but you don't have to use Rawl for this. And the other thing that I would pair with those is Grumgully, but I'll get into that when I talk about the deck itself. Now, drawing cards. Drawing cards is going to be pretty easy. Now, well, that's if you have more at your disposal, I should say, right? So what you're going to want to do is figure out what planeswalker you're using. So after you figured out what goblins you can throw in, then figure out your planeswalker. So let's say that you're going mono red, go to red, and then just go ahead and type in draw. You're going to want to figure out what is it that you have that's going to draw you cards. My suggestion would be to find things that draw multiple cards in a turn, or at the very least, will draw cards every single turn. So either draw multiple cards or draws you cards every single turn. So for this, for newer players, I like Magmatic Insight because it's going to draw you 2 cards. So that's going to definitely trigger the Resourceful 2. It'll actually trigger it both times. I really like Stormfist Crusader for this node for that because you're going to draw a card every one of your turns. So you're guaranteed to trigger that Resourceful every turn. However, this is a human, so it will not count for the creatures for the gem conversion. And then other than that, unfortunately, red doesn't have a whole lot of great card draw. So this is why I was suggesting you potentially pair this with Rawl or one of the Bolas's if you have them. Now, let's say that you're also able to incorporate blue. You'll see immediately that this is going to make your life a heck of a lot easier because there's a lot more card draw available at your disposal. So this node is pretty cut and dry. Like there really isn't too much to say about it. I'll go ahead and show you the giants and merfolk just so that you know that I'm not yanking your chain. But these are our options for giants. All right, so there really aren't many. There's pretty much nothing that produces giant tokens. And the only thing that makes giant tokens is not showing because it's a spell, but it requires you to have food out. So giant opportunity. But this will not summon you multiple giants. So it's really not going to get you that fairy tale easily. As for the merfolk, while there are some pretty cool merfolk, there's nothing that makes merfolk tokens. So that's kind of a bummer. And so while Benthic Biomancer is great for this node, so if you have Benthic Biomancer, it's awesome. It's going to count as a merfolk, and when you match the adapted gems, you draw a card, which is pretty cool. But if you're running Benthic Biomancer, your best bet is to run it in conjunction with Zagana, and Zagana is a mythic, so it won't be as easy to do. So that's why I'm suggesting goblins. There are some commons out there, and uncommons, there's some great synergy, and it'll be pretty useful. Now, let's go over the decks that I'm suggesting, and why is it that I'm suggesting these decks. First things first, if you can use a different planeswalker other than Chandra 1, please use a planeswalker other than Chandra 1. Chandra 1 is not very good. So you can use Koth here, you'll see that I've got 0 supports in the deck, so you can use Koth here, you can use the newest Chandra from M20, you can use really just about any other red planeswalker. But if you don't have the others, go ahead, use Chandra, that's fine. Now for the cards. So we've got Dragon Fodder and Goblin Gathering. These are going to help us with completing that Summon Goblin objective. And that's actually also why the Pile Driver is here. Pile Driver is going to get Berserker. It's going to become a 6/2 with just the Goblin Fodder tokens out. And so in Bronze and Silver, you'll find that your Pile Driver is going to go ahead and kill a lot. Now, I actually really like Grumgully the Generous here, because whenever a non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1. So that means that for each of those goblin tokens that you summon, those goblin tokens, instead of coming out as 1/1s, are now going to be coming out as 2/2s. So Grumgully is amazing with tokens, and Grumgully is going to make those tokens significantly more viable and significantly more powerful. Also, Grumgully is only 9 mana and is a 4/4, so that's a pretty decent body for being a 9 mana creature. Stormfist Crusader, I've already gone over. It's going to give you a little bit of extra card draw. You definitely want to make sure that you have that for this node. The same is going to be true for Magmatic Insight. It's just going to give you a little bit more card draw, which is going to help with the node. We want to draw 15 or more cards. And then the last bit of the deck is removal. So I've thrown in Demolish, I've thrown in Angrat's Rampage, and I've thrown in Justice Strike. Now, you may be looking at this and saying, oh gosh, I really need gem conversion. There isn't a whole lot of gem conversion that we can use here, but if you do want to throw gem conversion in, I would go ahead and throw out something like Samut's Sprint for that gem conversion. And then I would even consider throwing out Goblin Pile Driver. And if you can throw both of those out for like convert to red cards, that's really going to help you a lot. But if you don't have them, then don't stress yourself out too much. So convert red, we've got a few options at our disposal. We've got Dwarven Mine, which is amazing. I would absolutely use this if you can. If you've pulled Embereth, this is a great card to throw in too. Go ahead and use that. And then our last option is actually just converting to your Planeswalker's colors, and it's that gate that you'll see that I show all the time, and it's Gateway Plaza. Now, as for the deck for people that have basically everything, like me, you're going to want to use Sarkhan Unbroken. You want Sarkhan Unbroken because you want access to the green, you want access to the red, and you want access to the blue. You don't want to be using Karn for this one because you want Karn for the first node. Now, for this, you really need Krenko. Krenko is going to summon you all the goblins, and that's great. Now, you might be wondering, at first glance on this deck, why did I choose Chord of Calling instead of Finale of Devastation? With Finale of Devastation, Krenko comes out and swings with a vengeance, and you don't want that, because with all the tokens that he'll produce, and with the damage he does, you might find that you kill your opponent too quickly, and you don't draw the 15 cards. And so you really want to watch out for that. Krenko buffs really quickly. So that's why I ran Chord of Calling. The rest of this is largely explanatory. So we've got Blue Gem Conversion, Castle Vantris, and Mystic Sanctuary. Vantris is amazing for this node because it serves as gem conversion and card draw. And then we've got Urza for additional gem conversion. You might be wondering, why run Urza here? Well, it just converts so many gems to blue that in conjunction with Castle Vantris, which is going to have blue activations to draw cards, and with running a card like Finale of Revelation, which is going to boost our blue mana bonus, you're going to find that you're getting so much mana that you'll just be able to play out your hand, and you'll be able to play all the cards that you're drawing. Especially if you wind up getting Season of Growth down, which is going to make it so that every time Krenko pops a little token down, you draw a card. For that matter, anytime you play a creature, you draw a card. So Season of Growth with Krenko is going to be drawing you a full hand pretty much every turn, and if you've got Urza down with your other gem converters, you're going to get full mana to all those cards every turn, and you'll find that you're playing everything out, you kill your opponent really quickly, you're drawing cards, makes the node really, really easy. Killer Instinct is in here to get Urza and Krenko more quickly, and Death Sprout and Casualties of War are both serving as my traditional removal cards. So I hope this all has helped you, and I hope you get perfect in the event, and I'll see you in the next one.